Hi class, today's lesson is still under the topic of inheritance. So the inheritance also covers mitosis and meiosis, but before we get there, we want to talk about stem cells. I think it's a really interesting topic, which is why I'm kind of going to concentrate a bit more on it than what it normally is concentrated in the IGCSE curriculum, which again will be good for you guys when you guys go into IB Bio. Okay, so learning outcomes. I'm only drawing two learning outcomes for this lesson, so it should be a pretty short lesson. I want to talk about what stem cells are first. So you might have already heard of this term before, you might have seen it in a journal or an article, especially with some new science that are coming out there. So what stem cells are these are really, really awesome cells. These cells can essentially go to become other types of specialized cells, or they can go and just divide through mitosis and just become more of the same type of stem cells. So when you are stem cells, you are unspecialized. Okay, you don't have any specific function at the moment. You might just be sitting there awaiting development to become a specialized cells, and you're just chilling. Okay, now when they become a specialized cells, right? When your body needs, let's say, more nerve cells, more muscle cells, these then can develop and change to become these specialized cells. And I know you know what specialized cells are. Remember, these cells have very specific function and very specific adapted features for those functions. Okay, I just want to draw a picture because you might be asking, well, where did they originally came from? So when we go back to topic 16, do you guys remember what an embryo is? So again, an embryo is when that sperm cell comes together and fuses with the egg cell. There's the nuclei of the cells, okay? And they come together and they fuse together, making a zygote. Hope you guys can remember that. Now, do you remember roughly how many days later a zygote becomes an embryo? Okay, so like roughly 5 days, right? So here's your zygote, and then here is your embryo. And when it becomes an embryo, it means that the cell has started to divide, right? So the zygote divides into 2, into 4, into 8, etc. through mitosis. Now, when this happens, okay, I'm just gonna imagine there's a bunch of cells just kind of sitting around it like a ring. But I think I drew this one time to show you guys a blastocyst. So this is the stage of the embryo where there's like a bundle of cells, okay, like a mass of cells like in the middle there. Okay, these are your stem cells. These cells are the ones that will eventually become all the cells that make up who you guys are, the ones that make up your heart cells, your liver cells, your stomach cells, all of those things. Whoops, stem cells. Okay, so these are really important. So again, remember, they start off as unspecialized cells and they can become specialized cells, or they can just replicate and make more stem cells in case you need to repair later on. Now, having said that, you can see that where you can get stem cells are from embryos, okay? You can also get stem cells from non-embryonic cells, such as somatic cells. So these are your adult cells. Now, things like bone marrows can contain some stem cells that you can, again, draw from. Now, when you look at this, thinking about the fact that you can get stem cells from embryos, okay? I want to ask you guys, like, which embryos are you referring to? Are these embryos that they're just going right into a woman's body and pulling them out? Like, where are these embryos coming from? Can you think of any topic that we would have talked about where people may have embryos on hand and are no longer using them? Hopefully you have come to the conclusion that it was during our conversation about in vitro fertilization. So remember, when we're doing in vitro fertilization, it is fusing the sperm and the egg external to the body, right? So pulling sperms out of the body, taking eggs out of the body, and then on a petri dish or a test tube, you are going to then fuse those nuclei together, forming those embryos. Now, sometimes the parents or the person or the embryo belongs to may decide, you know what, I don't need them anymore, or they were successful with the first couple of batches of embryos they had, and they still have other embryos that they no longer need. So they can donate them to science to use for stem cell research. So then you gotta ask yourself, well, why would we want to do stem cell research? Like, why is that so important to us? And that's gonna lead us to the activity we're gonna do for this lesson, okay, on stem cells. So thinking about how humans can use stem cells to benefit them. All right, so I'm gonna just get out of the drawing and go back to the desktop here. So I'm gonna show you guys some images, okay? Following just like a sample of what one cell would look like when it's dividing to become two cells. When we talk about mitosis and meiosis, we'll talk more about what needs to divide first and then what needs to divide after that to eventually have the second additional cell. So